My mom sold me as a teenage bride to my older cousin to pay off debt. I escaped to another country, changed my name, and never looked back. The conversation that would change my life forever happened on a sweltering July evening in 2018, when I was 15 years old and still naive enough to believe that my mother would always protect me from harm. We were sitting on the front porch of our cramped house in rural Kentucky, where 3 generations of my family had struggled with poverty, addiction, and the kind of desperation that makes people consider unthinkable solutions to impossible problems. "Yasmin, we need to talk about your future," my mother said, her voice carrying the weight of decisions I didn't yet understand she'd already made. "About what's best for you and what's best for our family." I was entering my sophomore year of high school, more concerned with algebra homework and whether Jake Morrison from my chemistry class would notice me at the homecoming dance than with conversations about my future. At 15, my biggest worries involved friend drama and whether I'd saved enough money from my part-time job at the local diner to buy the homecoming dress I'd been admiring at the thrift store. "What do you mean, Mom?" I asked, though something in her tone made my stomach clench with the instinctive fear that comes from recognizing danger even when you can't identify its source. "Your cousin Ahmed has been asking about you," she said, not meeting my eyes as she spoke. "He's doing well for himself now, has a good job in construction, and he's ready to settle down with a wife who can help him build a proper family." Ahmed was my father's nephew, 28 years old, and someone I'd always found creepy and inappropriate during the rare family gatherings where our paths crossed. He had a way of looking at me that made my skin crawl, and he'd made comments about my developing body that had seemed wrong even to my teenage understanding of normal family dynamics. "Why are you telling me about Ahmed's dating life?" I asked, though I was starting to suspect that this conversation was heading somewhere I desperately didn't want it to go. "Because he's interested in marrying you," my mother said bluntly. "And because our family needs the financial security that marriage would provide." The words hit me like a physical blow. At 15, I'd never had a serious boyfriend, never been kissed, never even been allowed to go on group dates without strict supervision. The idea of marriage seemed impossibly adult and far in the future, something that belonged to a different version of myself who would emerge after college, career development, and years of life experience I hadn't yet accumulated. "Mom, I'm 15 years old," I said, my voice rising with panic and disbelief. "I can't get married. I'm still in high school. I want to go to college." "15 is old enough in our culture," she replied, using the same tone she used to discuss practical matters like grocery shopping or bill paying. "Your grandmother was married at 14, and she raised 6 children successfully. You're mature for your age, and Ahmed is a good man who will take care of you." "I don't want to be taken care of by Ahmed," I protested, standing up from the porch swing where we'd been sitting. "I want to finish school and go to college and figure out what I want to do with my life. College is expensive, and we don't have money for luxuries like higher education," my mother said dismissively. "Marriage to Ahmed will give you security, purpose, and a family of your own. It's a better future than anything we could provide for you here." But I didn't want the future she was describing. I wanted to study journalism, to travel, to experience the world beyond the small Kentucky town where my family had been trapped in cycles of poverty and limited opportunities for generations. Marriage at 15 felt like a death sentence for all the dreams I'd been nurturing about my adult life. "What if I say no?" I asked, though I could already see in my mother's expression that refusal wasn't being presented as an option. "You won't say no," she replied with the confidence of someone who'd already made arrangements that couldn't be undone. "Because you're a good daughter who understands that families make sacrifices for each other. Because you know that Ahmed can provide for you in ways we never could." Over the next few days, the full scope of what my mother had planned became clear. She and my father had accumulated significant gambling debts over the past 2 years, borrowing money from dangerous people who were now demanding payment with threats that had escalated beyond mere financial intimidation. Ahmed had offered to pay off their debts in exchange for my hand in marriage, presenting himself as the solution to our family's financial crisis. $30,000, my father explained when I confronted him about the arrangement. "That's what we owe, and that's what Ahmed is willing to pay to make you his wife. It's a good deal for everyone involved." "A good deal?" I repeated, incredulous that my father was discussing my marriage like a business transaction. You're selling me to your nephew to pay off gambling debts. We're arranging a marriage that will benefit everyone, he corrected, though his inability to meet my eyes suggested he understood the moral implications of what he was proposing. Ahmed gets a young, beautiful wife. You get financial security and a husband who can provide for you. We get relief from debts that could destroy our family. And I get no choice in any of this? You get the choice to be grateful for a family that's looking out for your best interests, my mother interjected. Ahmed could have his pick of wives, but he's chosen you. That's an honor, not a burden. But it felt like the worst kind of burden, the weight of other people's expectations and financial problems crushing my dreams before I'd even had a chance to pursue them. The marriage was scheduled for late August, just 2 weeks before my 16th birthday, and my parents had already begun making arrangements with a local imam who was willing to officiate despite my obvious reluctance and young age. This is illegal, I told my mother when she showed me the wedding dress she'd purchased from a consignment shop. You can't force a 15-year-old to get married, even in Kentucky. It's not illegal if it's a religious ceremony, she said, though I suspected she wasn't entirely certain about the legal details. And once you're 16, we can make it official with the state. Everything will be proper and legal. I don't want it to be proper and legal. I want it to not happen at all. Yasmin, you're being dramatic about something that will ultimately make you happy, my mother said with the condescending tone she used when she thought I was being childishly stubborn. Once you're married and settled, you'll understand that this was the best thing for everyone. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a nightmare of preparation activities that felt like planning my own funeral. Relatives I barely knew offered congratulations on my upcoming marriage. Neighbors made comments about how lucky I was to have found such a successful husband at such a young age, and Ahmed himself began visiting our house regularly to discuss our future together. I'm going to take good care of you, he would tell me during these visits, his hand resting possessively on my knee in ways that made me want to run from the room. You'll be a good wife, and I'll be a good provider. We'll have beautiful children together. The thought of having children with Ahmed made me physically sick. At 15, I wasn't ready for sex, pregnancy, or any of the adult responsibilities that marriage would entail. I'd barely started menstruating regularly, had never been in love, and couldn't imagine sharing intimate physical experiences with someone who felt more like a predator than a potential partner. Ahmed, I'm not ready for marriage, I told him directly during one of his visits. I'm still a child. I want to finish school and experience life before I settle down. You'll finish growing up as my wife, he replied with the confidence of someone who'd never considered that my preferences might matter. I'll teach you everything you need to know about being a woman. It'll be better for you to learn from a husband than to pick up bad habits from other teenagers. The conversation revealed everything I needed to know about Ahmed's attitude toward our proposed marriage. He didn't see me as a person with agency and dreams of my own. He saw me as raw material he could shape into the wife he wanted, regardless of what I wanted for myself. 2 weeks before the scheduled wedding, I made the decision that would save my life and determine my future. I was going to run away. I'd been secretly researching options for months, using the computer at the public library to learn about domestic violence resources, teenage runaway support services, and legal protections for minors in forced marriage situations. What I discovered was both encouraging and terrifying. There were people who could help me escape, but the process would require me to leave everything I'd ever known and start over with nothing. There's a network of organizations that help young women escape forced marriages, a social worker named Maria Santos explained when I finally worked up the courage to call a domestic violence hotline. But you need to understand that leaving will mean cutting all ties with your family and possibly never being able to return home safely. I understand, I said, though I wasn't sure I really understood the full implications of what I was choosing. I can't marry Ahmed. I'd rather risk everything than spend my life trapped in a marriage I never wanted. Maria connected me with an underground network of activists, social workers, and former victims who specialized in helping young women escape forced marriages and honor-based violence. They provided resources, safe houses, legal assistance, and most importantly, a pathway to a different kind of future than the one my family had planned for me. We can get you out of Kentucky and into a safe house in another state, Maria explained during one of our secret phone conversations. From there, we can help you apply for protective services, get you enrolled in school, and start the process of building an independent life. What about my family? What will happen to them when Ahmed finds out I'm gone? Your safety has to be the priority, Maria said gently. Your family made the choice to put you in danger by arranging this marriage. You're not responsible for the consequences of their decisions. The escape plan was simple but required precise timing and absolute secrecy. On the morning of August 20th, 3 days before my scheduled wedding, I would leave for school as usual but instead meet Maria at a predetermined location where volunteers would drive me to a safe house in Ohio. From there, I'd be connected with legal advocates who could help me navigate the complex process of emancipation and protective custody. Bring only essential documents and items you can't replace, Maria instructed. Birth certificate, social security card, any money you've saved, and maybe 1 or 2 sentimental items that are small enough to fit in a backpack. Everything else will have to be left behind. The night before my escape, I lay in bed listening to my parents discussing wedding preparations in the next room, knowing it would be the last time I'd ever hear their voices. Despite everything they'd put me through, they were still my parents, and leaving them felt like cutting out part of my own heart. But staying felt like cutting out my soul entirely. The morning of my escape dawned gray and drizzly, matching the grief I felt about leaving the only life I'd ever known. I dressed for school as usual, packed my backpack with the documents and few possessions I could take with me, and said goodbye to my parents with the knowledge that it was really goodbye forever. Have a good day at school, sweetheart, my mother said, kissing my forehead in a gesture that felt like both blessing and betrayal. When you get home, we'll do a final fitting for your wedding dress. Okay, Mom, I said, my voice steady despite the emotions churning in my stomach. I love you. I love you too, Yasmin. Everything we're doing is because we love you and want what's best for your future. I walked to the end of our street just like any other school day, but instead of turning toward the bus stop, I continued to the gas station 3 blocks away where Maria was waiting in a nondescript sedan with Tennessee license plates. Seeing her was like glimpsing salvation, the first adult in months who was prioritizing my safety over my family's financial problems. Are you ready for this? Maria asked as I climbed into her car with my backpack and the profound understanding that my childhood was officially over. I'm terrified, I said honestly. But I'm more terrified of what will happen if I stay. The drive to Ohio took 4 hours, during which Maria explained the resources available to me and the process I'd need to follow to establish legal independence from my family. The Safe House was run by a nonprofit organization that specialized in helping young women escape forced marriages, honor violence, and other forms of family-based abuse. You're not the first teenager we've helped in this situation, explained Sarah Kim, the social worker who would be coordinating my case. Unfortunately, forced marriage of minors is more common than most people realize, even in the United States. We have protocols in place to help you build a new life safely. The Safe House was a modest residential facility that housed 6 young women ranging in age from 16 to 22. All of whom had fled similar situations involving forced marriage, honor violence, or family-based abuse. Hearing their stories was both comforting and heartbreaking. Comforting because I wasn't alone in my experience. Heartbreaking because so many young women were being victimized by the very people who should have been protecting them. I was supposed to marry my uncle when I was 14, shared Amira, a 17-year-old who'd been at the Safe House for 8 months. My parents said it was our cultural tradition, but I knew it was really about money and family politics. I've been here since I escaped, and I'm finally starting to feel like I have control over my own life. The hardest part isn't the escape, added Fatima, a 19-year-old who'd fled a forced marriage 2 years earlier. It's building a new identity and learning to trust yourself when you've been told your entire life that other people know what's best for you. Building a new identity was exactly what I needed to do. Starting with the most basic element, my name. Yasmin Habib was the girl who'd been promised to Ahmed, the daughter who'd disappointed her parents by refusing to sacrifice her future for their debts. I needed to become someone else, someone who belonged to herself and could write her own story. I want to change my name to Anna, I told Sarah during one of our counseling sessions. Anna Martinez. It sounds like someone who could be anyone, do anything, go anywhere. Anna is a beautiful name, Sarah agreed. And choosing your own name is an important part of claiming your autonomy and independence. The legal process of changing my name and establishing my independence was complex and emotionally draining. I had to provide detailed testimony about the circumstances that led to my escape, undergo psychological evaluation to demonstrate my competency to make independent decisions, and navigate a family court system that wasn't always equipped to handle cases involving cultural practices and family dynamics that fell outside mainstream American experiences. Your case is complicated because your parents will likely argue that they were acting in your best interests according to their cultural and religious beliefs, explained Jennifer Walsh, the attorney who represented me during the emancipation proceedings. We need to demonstrate that forced marriage of a minor constitutes abuse regardless of cultural context. Is it possible that the court will order me to return to my family? It's possible, but unlikely given the evidence we have about the planned marriage and your clear testimony about not consenting to it, Jennifer assured me. The court's primary concern is your safety and well-being, not preserving family relationships that put you at risk. My parents hired their own attorney and contested the emancipation petition, arguing that I'd been manipulated by outside influences and that the planned marriage was a legitimate cultural practice that didn't constitute abuse. They painted me as a confused teenager who'd been brainwashed by anti-family activists, rather than a young woman making rational decisions about her own safety and future. Yasmin is a good girl who's been led astray by people who don't understand our family's values, my mother testified during one of the court hearings. She belongs at home with her family, not in some facility with strangers who are filling her head with Western ideas about independence and rebellion. Mrs. Habib, your daughter was 15 years old when you arranged her marriage to a 28-year-old man, the judge, Patricia Morrison, pointed out. Can you explain how that arrangement serves your daughter's best interests? In our culture, early marriage provides security and stability for young women, my mother replied. Ahmed is a good man who could provide for Yasmin in ways we never could. The marriage would have benefited everyone involved, including your daughter, who explicitly stated she didn't want to marry Ahmed. Children don't always understand what's best for their future. Parents have to make difficult decisions that their children might not appreciate until they're older. Judge Morrison's expression made it clear that she wasn't impressed by my parents' justifications for forcing a child into marriage. After hearing testimony from multiple witnesses, reviewing evidence about the planned wedding, and speaking with me privately about my wishes and understanding of the situation, she granted my petition for emancipation. The court finds that returning this minor to her parents' custody would place her at substantial risk of harm, Judge Morrison stated in her ruling. The evidence clearly shows that the parents were planning to force their 15-year-old daughter into marriage with an adult male, which constitutes a form of abuse regardless of cultural or religious justifications. The emancipation ruling legally severed my relationship with my parents and gave me the right to make my own decisions about where to live, what to study, and how to build my future. It was simultaneously liberating and terrifying. I was free from the threat of forced marriage, but I was also completely on my own in ways that most teenagers never have to experience. You're officially Ana Martinez now, Sarah told me when the legal process was complete. You have a new social security number, a clean legal identity, and the right to determine your own future. How does it feel? Like I can finally breathe, I said, though the relief was mixed with grief for the family relationships I'd lost and the childhood I'd been forced to abandon. From the safe house, I transitioned to a transitional living program that helped young adults develop independent living skills while completing their education. I finished high school through an accelerated program, worked part-time jobs to save money for college, and slowly built the foundation for the life I'd dreamed about during those terrifying weeks when marriage seemed inevitable. The scholarship I received to attend community college was specifically designated for survivors of domestic violence and human trafficking, recognizing that forced marriage fell under the umbrella of gender-based violence that affected young women across cultural and economic lines. Studying journalism felt like reclaiming the dreams that had almost been stolen from me, and every assignment, every grade, every semester brought me closer to the future I'd chosen for myself. You've made remarkable progress, my college advisor, Dr. Patricia Chen, told me during my graduation ceremony 3 years later. Considering everything you've overcome to get here, your academic achievements are even more impressive. But the achievements weren't just academic, they were psychological, emotional, and spiritual. I'd learned to trust my own judgment, to set boundaries with people who claimed to know what was best for me, and to build relationships based on mutual respect rather than cultural obligations or family loyalty. The transfer to a four-year university felt like crossing into a completely different world, where my background and escape story were just one part of my identity rather than the defining feature of my existence. I studied international journalism with a focus on human rights, drawn to stories about people who'd overcome systemic oppression and rebuilt their lives on their own terms. Why journalism? My professor, Dr. Michael Rodriguez, asked during a career counseling session. What draws you to storytelling as a profession? Because stories have power, I replied. My story saved my life by connecting me with people who could help me escape. Other people's stories taught me that I wasn't alone and that survival was possible. I want to tell stories that might save someone else's life. The internship I completed at a human rights organization focused specifically on forced marriage and honor violence was both rewarding and emotionally challenging. Working with other survivors, documenting their experiences, and advocating for policy changes that could protect future victims felt like turning my trauma into something meaningful and constructive. You have a unique perspective on these issues because you've lived through them, explained Maria Santos, who'd remained a mentor and friend since helping me escape 5 years earlier. Your voice carries weight because you're not just advocating for hypothetical victims, you're speaking from personal experience about the impact of these practices. Today, at 23, I work as a freelance journalist specializing in human rights stories, with a particular focus on forced marriage, honor violence, and the experiences of young women who've escaped family-based abuse. I've written articles that have been published in national magazines, spoken at conferences about my experience, and consulted with organizations that provide services to survivors. My family has made periodic attempts to contact me over the years, usually through intermediaries who claim they want to reconcile and that they've forgiven me for my rebellion. These overtures always include assurances that Ahmed has moved on and married someone else, as if the threat of forced marriage was the only barrier to rebuilding our relationship. Your parents miss you, my aunt told me during one phone call that somehow reached me despite my efforts to maintain privacy. They're proud of your success and want to be part of your life again. They made their choice when they tried to sell me into marriage, I replied. And I made mine when I chose to save myself. Those choices have consequences that can't be undone by forgiveness. But your family. Family forgives and moves forward together. Family protects each other and prioritizes each other's safety and well-being. What they did wasn't family love, it was family business that treated me like property to be traded. The conversations with extended family members who want to broker reconciliation are always difficult because they require me to defend choices that shouldn't need defending. I shouldn't have to justify escaping a forced marriage, changing my name, or building an independent life. But cultural and family expectations don't disappear just because you've legally severed those relationships. Do you ever regret leaving? Dr. Susan Walsh, my therapist, asked during one of our sessions about dealing with family pressure and cultural expectations. Never, I said without hesitation. I regret that leaving was necessary. I regret that my parents chose debt relief over my well-being. I regret that I lost my family by saving myself. But I don't regret the choice to escape, because that choice gave me the life I have now. The life I have now includes a career I'm passionate about, relationships based on equality and mutual respect, and the freedom to make decisions about my body, my future, and my family planning. I'm in a healthy romantic relationship with someone who sees me as an equal partner rather than a possession to be managed or controlled. I can't imagine being forced into marriage as a teenager, my boyfriend James said when I shared my story with him. The courage it took to escape and rebuild your entire life, that's incredible. It didn't feel like courage at the time, I replied. It felt like survival. When the alternative is losing yourself completely, running away starts to feel like the only rational choice. The work I do now documenting other survivors' stories has shown me that my experience, while traumatic, was also fortunate in many ways. I had access to resources that helped me escape safely, legal protections that allowed me to establish independence, and support systems that helped me rebuild my life. Many young women in similar situations don't have access to those resources, and their stories end very differently. Every story you tell, every article you write, creates awareness that might help someone else recognize their situation and seek help. Maria Santos reminded me during a recent conversation about my journalism work. Your escape wasn't just about saving yourself, it's become part of saving others. Anna Martinez, the identity I chose for myself at 16, has become more real and authentic than Yasmin Habib ever was. Anna is someone who belongs to herself, who writes her own story, and who uses her voice to advocate for people who haven't yet found theirs. The girl who was almost sold into marriage is gone, replaced by a woman who understands that freedom isn't free. It requires constant vigilance, ongoing advocacy, and the courage to keep choosing yourself even when other people think you should choose differently. Some bridges can't be rebuilt once they're burned, and some choices can't be undone once they're made. But sometimes burning bridges is the only way to save yourself from drowning in other people's expectations and limitations. I chose to save myself, and I've never looked back. And every day I wake up in a life I created through my own choices and efforts, I know I made the right decision.